Greetings, viewers. I want to welcome you once again to my YouTube class. And in today's class, we are going to be talking about another parasite that is called Echinococcus granulosus. This is a plate helminthes parasite, and I know I have studied that group of parasites called plate helminthes. We studied the schistosoma, we studied the fasciola, and we have also studied the tapeworms. The tapeworms are called the cystoda, and this parasite happens to be one of the cystod parasites, Echinococcus granulosus. Okay, the first thing I would like you to understand is that this parasite, Echinococcus granulosus, was discovered by the scientist called Hartmann in the year 1695. And in the year 1863, another scientist called Goes also affirmed the discovery of Hartmann. So these are the two scientists that discovered this parasite that is called Echinococcus granulosus. Hartmann 1695 and Goes 1863. Then in terms of hosts, we have two, or let me say three different types of hosts when it comes to Echinococcus granulosus. Dog is usually the primary host or the definitive host of Echinococcus granulosus. Then man, this parasite can also affect man or infect man, but then man is not the definitive host. Man is an accidental host. So it gets into the body of man accidentally, or we'll still come to that through the injection of the feces of dogs, but then it survives but does not develop into adult or does not reproduce in the body of man. So man forms what is called the dead end host. So, but the sheep is the intermediate host. The sheep is the intermediate host. So we have three different kinds of hosts that are usually affected by this parasite or by this disease, echinococcusis. A dog as a definitive host, sheep as the intermediate host, then man as the accidental host. There is also called a zoonotic disease. A zoonotic disease is a kind of disease that is transmissible between animals and man. You can see through dog, man can get infected. That is what we call a zoonotic disease. Any disease that is transferable or transmissible between animals and man is known as a zoonotic disease. Then, of course, the size of this parasite is about 3 to 6 millimeter long. I mean, in terms of length, is about 3 to 6 millimeter long. And of course, because it's a tapeworm or a cystod, of course, it has the scholars, which is known as the head, and a neck, and the proglottis, that is the segments that are attached to it. And these collars is usually equipped with suckers and hooves, which of course the parasites use to uh, absorb nutrients from the host and also clench on the wall of the intestine. So that is a few things I want you to know about the parasites when it comes to introduction. Apart from granulosus, another species of Echinococcus that is also important is the multicularis. The multicularis, even though granulosus is more prevalent, is more common, sorry, than this multicularis. Then in terms of classification, the kingdom, of course, is Animalia. The phylum, of course, is Platyhelminthes, which I've mentioned before now. The class is Cystoda. Then the order is Cyclophilidia. Don't forget that when we studied Platyhelminthes, uh, when I studied the tapeworm, sorry, we talked about the two different orders of medical importance when it comes to cystoda. we have the cyclophilidia, and we have the pseudophilidia. And I mentioned parasites such as the Taenia cilium, Taenia saginata, Hymenolipis nana, Echinococcus granulosus as the parasites that are under the cyclophilidia as an order. Then coming to pseudophilidia, we have two main parasites, the Diphyllobotum latum and the Spirometra sp. These are the two parasites under the order Pseudophilidia and under Cystoda. So that is why you can see Psychophilidia as the order. The family is Ctenidia. Ctenidia is the family. Then of course the genus is Echinococcus. Then the species is granulosus. Granulosus. So having known this, the next thing to talk about is the life cycle of this parasite. The life cycle of this parasite. So I will put it this way: as you already know, the definitive host of this parasite is the dog. So the parasite matures into adults in the intestine of dogs. And by the time they mature into adults, of course, they lay eggs. Their cystoda are usually hermaphrodites. So both sex organs are found in each single segment. So they lay eggs. These eggs, of course, are released through the feces of the dog when the dog passes out feces. So man can only get infected when the food of man or the water of man has been contaminated with the feces of dog, which is of course seeded with the eggs of Echinococcus granulosus. So when man now taking the food or possibly the water or possibly through a mechanical vector, don't forget I've always been talking about this mechanical vector. So in the case of mechanical vector, what happens is that the fly may perch on the feces of dog and also perch on the food of man. And once the individual takes that kind of food, of course, the person can also get infected because that person would have ingested the eggs of Echinococcus granulosus. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that the feces, the eggs are usually found in the feces of dogs. Why? Because dog is a definitive host. That is a host where the parasite matures into adults and of course we begin to lay eggs. Okay, then once man ingests the eggs of this parasite, of course uh, the eggs hatch in the intestine, in the intestine of man, and once it hatches, then of course it penetrates through the mucosa of the intestine and joint circulation follows through the radicals of the portal vein and arrive at the liver. From the liver, the parasite also joins pulmonary circulation where it arrives at the lungs. And within the lungs, the parasite now begins to wander through some of the lungs, some of the organs of the body. It can pass through the brain, the heart, the spleen, or the kidney, or any other organ within the body of man. Then it can settle within these organs. It can settle within the brain. The larva can settle, the parasite can settle within the brain or the kidney or the heart or any other organ. But once it settles within this place, then a kind of cellular reaction involving the monocyte, giant cells, and one other cell involving the monocytes, then the giant cell, and I think the macrophages. So once this reaction occurs, then it's a kind of uh, surrounds the parasites, and this cycling of the parasite by these immune cells now destroys some of the larvae, some of the parasites, but some of them may not be destroyed. And those ones that are not destroyed go ahead to transform into what we now call the hydatid cyst. The hydatid cyst. Now, once hydatid cyst is formed, then the cellular reaction begins to dwindle, begins to decrease. It decreases to a level in such a way that another connective tissue, which is called the fibroblast, will now be released or be produced. The fibroblast comes now to completely separate the hydatid cyst from other neighboring tissue so that it does not infect other neighboring tissue. That is one of the functions of one of the purpose of producing or releasing the fibroblast. It's a kind of connective tissue, and it produces the fibrous tissue, which now help to separate the hydatid cyst from other neighboring tissues so that they will not be affected. And once this happens, it is now called pericyst. That hydatid cyst will now be called a pericyst. So it remains at this level of pericyst within this visceral organ, and it can stay there for a very long time until possibly when it is removed by surgery. But assuming dog feeds on a sheep, which is the intermediate host, probably a slaughtered sheep, then dog comes around to feed on the carcass or probably on the leftover meat, then the parasite gets into the dog and matures into adult. Don't forget that even in the intermediate host, the parasite does not mature into adult because the intermediate host does not support the adult stage of the parasite. And because it's very difficult for dogs to have access to the carcass of man, then the parasite will always not develop into adult. As a matter of fact, the ones that get into man ends their life cycle there. And that is why man is called the dead end host, because it does not develop further, and it's difficult for dogs to feed on the carcass of man. Assuming dogs can feed on the carcass of man, then the larva could from there develop into adults in the dogs. But it's almost impossible because once somebody dies, of course, the person is buried. So man is usually known as the dead end host of Echinococcusis granulosus. So, but if dog feeds on the carcass of sheep, of course, the cycle is repeated. So this is the life cycle of Echinococcus granulosus. Then pathology. The pathology is simple. The parasite forms hydatid cyst, a kind of a fluid-filled hydatid cyst within the visceral organs of man. And I've mentioned these organs: the brain, the kidney, uh, the spleen, the heart, especially the heart and the brain. It goes to form, and it results to pain. It can cause pain in those parts of the body where the cyst has been formed. So that pain and possibly inflammation of some of those organs, like the liver, can be inflamed, resulting to hepatomegaly, and even the lungs can also be inflamed. In fact, all those other organs that are implicated in this disease can also be inflamed. So that is the pathological effect of this parasite. Then diagnosis. Diagnosis is simple, and that is through the use of a scan, or what we call MRI. That is a magnetic resonance imaging. So the use of MRI and probably scan can, of course, help to detect the hydatid cyst or the pericyst within those visceral organs. And having detected it, of course, PCR can also be used. Then the histopathology. Yes, histopathology can also be used to study some of the tissues that have been affected. So it's also another method of. Then of course, serological method is also uh, good. You know, and one can use that to detect the antibodies of Echinococcus within the bloodstream. That's the use of ELISA, that is the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. Then treatment. Well, the use of drug does not really work, even though you can use albendazole. But once a cyst is formed around this visceral organ, it's usually good for the person to go for surgery. You know, surgical method can help to remove those cysts that have been formed within the visceral organs of man. So that is way. Then of course, prevention and control, dogs should not be allowed to defecate within the environment, and I think that is uh, all I have to say in Echinococcus granulosus. So in our next class, we'll be looking at another parasite, Paragonimus westermanni. Is also another parasite influencing helminthes, even though it's not a cystoda. Paragonimus westermanni is not a cystoda, but a fluke. So we're going to study that and also study another cystoda under the other pseudophilidia, and that is Diphyllobothrium latum. So join me, be part of the class. See you in my next class.